Corriendo grabando 5, 4, 3, 2. Well, first, thank you very much for your time. When we, voy a pasarme de este lado. When we talk about Mozart, in your case, what do you think? What are the spirit of Mozart in this moment of the time?
The spirit of Mozart is unique because it's incredibly varied. I think Mozart is the person who shows all the faces of any human being in a very short amount of time within the composition. So you get sometimes even within the movement, if there is another part of the movement which is a bit more sad or something, it's clearly a different side of things. I mean, he really separates emotions, but in a very, very short amount of time. So you get a lot of changes all the time. That's why it's never boring. And he takes you along, I think, in a very gentle way on the journey of all those emotions which he's trying to express. Mm-hmm. And he speaks quite directly to the listener. You don't need a manual to listen to what he wants to say.
Mm-hmm. I choose that part of the city because it reminds me that we are in a festival.
Yes.
At the same time, as you in Salzburg reminds you, Mozart where is.
Yes.
So, what are the things that you think like a director to catch that part of the spirit of the time?
Yes.
But in this moment.
Both. I think you have to catch both. I think you have to try to get the right information. You need to read sources. You need to be aware of just technical matters. For example, if you look at the equipment like a tool, every tradesman has a tool. We have violin and bow. These are our tools. I don't make a sculpture with a hammer and a chisel. I make music with a violin and the bow, which is in the end exactly the same thing, to actually create something. But I have a text to do it, so I know what it should look like. But with those tools, I can already tell if I connect them to the time, like use a bow from the time. I can tell exactly, physically, by using it, there is a certain way it has to be it sounds, because you can't do something else with it. It's like if you try to speak really loud, you need a megaphone, otherwise it's not loud enough, or you need a smaller room to be understood. So that's the technical things you look at, and then the spiritual things come with that. You basically inspire yourself by using tools from the time, reading about it, trying to get involved in what was going on, maybe how big the groups were, how they traveled. It took them, 10 times, 20 times as long to get from A to B and play a concert. I mean, things were calmer. You try to be aware of this and then get inspired by all these circumstances. And then if you're a director, you only also have to pass it on. So it's actually very easy.
You said something very interesting to me about the humor sense.
Yes.
Between Mozart and Gruber.
Yes.
In that pieces that you're going to play.
Yes.
So if we think about the person, we can feel more closer the piece, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I talked about the humor also because there is a particular, I mean, every country, every city, every culture almost has a particular style of humor. People laugh about certain things. It's like code words almost. It's a way to communicate. There's something which you find particularly funny, another culture thinks that's not funny at all. Actually, it's very sad for us. Mm-hmm. So there are certain areas where this is linked, and that's definitely possible to realize for the listener in those two pieces, which one of them is only 30 or 50 years old and the other one is 250 years old. So that's something where you actually realize it comes from the same culture, although the ingredients are different and have changed because of the time and the history.
Mm-hmm. In musical terms, what are the connections between the Tchaikovsky as a Mozart fan and Mozart?
The stars. Sorry, I didn't understand.
What's the connection in musical terms between
connection? Yeah. Well, first of all, the connection is that Tchaikovsky was a big fan of Mozart. I mean, he had his biggest musical as a teenager. His biggest musical experience, which really moved him and seemed to show him. It's in letters and in his diaries what music can do as an experience with a listener, with listening to Don Giovanni. That was his big experience. And so it set a certain standard, I think, for him, what he would like to achieve as a composer. or what you would like to achieve as a composer to make felt in the listener. Because a composer, it's like a painter or a sculptor or an actor. Without words, you have to try differently to reach people with certain way of putting a melody or a certain way of orchestrating using certain instruments. I think it's also a very good example of a composer where you do not need a manual, that you actually understand what it is that he wants to say with Tchaikovsky.
My last question, it's a maybe metaphysic. What happened between the musician, the composer, and the listener? I mean, the music.
We give up
happened.
boundaries. I can tell you exactly what happens. Ideally, we give up boundaries, because we are talking about emotional conversation here in the end. I mean, music is a conversation just like words, and in every conversation, in order not to be hurt or to sort of say certain things, I think you put up boundaries. You have to protect yourself in certain ways as a speaker and as a listener. And I think the more these boundaries, you can't put them away, because I think we need them in order to actually exist. But I think ideally they will become transparent, if that's a metaphysical question. These boundaries, they start to breathe, they become translucent, you can look through them, and by looking through them you accept, well, things you might otherwise not, between a musician and a director, between a director and the composer, and between, the musicians and the audience.
Yeah. Well, that's all for this interview. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.